Hi guys, I hope you are good. Welcome to another episode of Drive with KB. The last time we are talking about automatic versus manual, which one is good for you and which one is better. If you missed that, just go back into our videos and then look at that video. Right, today so we are going to talk about another interesting topic that it's very known to all of us: fuel consumption and engine capacity. There's a bit of a confusion there. So I always get people saying that, and this car is a 2.5 and it consumes more fuel. The engine capacity, sorry, they don't say the engine capacity, but most of the time they say the consumption is 2.5. Or maybe when I'm selling a car to somebody and they're like, okay, I like this car, what is the consumption? And they're expecting you to answer by saying 1.8, 2.5, whatever it is. Well, I'm here to tell you that 1.8, 2.5 is not the consumption of the vehicle. It actually is the engine capacity. Okay, so let me just explain this a little bit. So we see 1.5 liters, we see 2.0 liters, and so on. Now if we talk about the engine capacity of a car and we say that it is, let's say, 2.5 liters, okay, now most of us know that liters, or a liter, is the SI unit for volume. So when you're calculating the volume of something, most of the time, if it's a liquid, you can measure it in liters. Okay, so what it means is that when you take the engine of a car, okay, it has what we call cylinders. Okay, so some vehicles have 4 cylinders, some vehicles have 6 cylinders, some vehicles have 8, 10, 12, and so on. Now the 2.5 liters that you know about is actually the combined volume of the cylinders in the engine. Okay, so if a car has 4 cylinders, right, the total volume of all the 4 cylinders put together is what will give you the engine capacity. Okay, so if it's 2.5 liters, it only means that when you sum up the volume of all the 4 cylinders, you will get 2.5 liters. Okay, so if it's 6 cylinders, the same thing, you sum up all the volumes and then you will get that 2.5 liters or 3 liters or whatever it is. All right, so that, I think, should clear or should provide some clarity on what 2.5 liters and 1.8 liters and 1.5 liters, whatever it is, what that means. Okay, it's actually the capacity. Now these cylinders that I'm talking about, that is where, when you start your car and when the car is moving, you have what you call combustion. Combustion is basically air and fuel coming together to produce fire. Okay, basically, and that is what runs the engine. And that's what makes your car move. So in the process of combustion, you have air coming in the cylinder and fuel mixing together. You know, when you mix air and fuel, oxygen, those of you who did science, you know that oxygen supports combustion. So when the air comes in contact with the fuel, you have that combustion. That is what moves the vehicle, right? So does this have a direct impact on fuel consumption? Yes, it does. In an ideal situation, engines with bigger capacities will normally consume more than engines with smaller capacities, right? Now, if you have a combined volume of 3 liters, it means that you have the capacity to contain more air and fuel, okay, to help the car perform. So the bigger the cylinder, the more air and fuel you would require, okay, to enable the car to perform. So it means that once you are taking in more fuel into the bigger cylinder, obviously it will consume more than the one with the smaller cylinders. Okay, now if you look at it that way, yes, of course, the bigger engines will consume more than the smaller engines. But what it also means is that the bigger engines will perform more, will have more performance than the smaller ones, because once you're able to take in more air and fuel, you are able to displace more air and fuel and that means that you are able to perform better. Okay, so in the plain sense of it, the bigger engine will consume more. However, due to technological advancements, you are able to get, first of all, a small engine to be able to perform as well as a big engine, and you are also able to get, in some situations, a big engine vehicle to consume less fuel than a small capacity vehicle. Okay, now let me go a bit into this. So if you have a small engine like a 1.5, it is possible to get that 1.5 to perform like a vehicle with a 2.5. And what can enable that to happen is the introduction of what we call a turbocharger. Okay, so these days you have vehicles with small engines but with a turbo, and because of that they're able to perform like the ones with the big engines. For example, you have these new Honda CR-Vs and then the Honda Accords and the Civics with a 1.5 turbo, but they perform like a 2.5 vehicle because the turbo adds that extra power to it. Okay, and because of that, you have smaller cylinders, but you have big performance, and it means that you are able to consume less fuel and get the same performance. You get it? Yes. So that is one instance where you are able to get a small engine to perform like a big one. Now, for some of the big engine vehicles also, like the ones with the V6s and then the V8s and V10, V12. So if you say V6, it just means that it has 6 cylinders which are arranged in a V shape. Okay, we'll go more into that in another video. What can happen with some of these vehicles is that when you are cruising, okay, when you are cruising on a highway, the system is designed that for some of them, that some of the cylinders will shut off. So you can have a V6 engine shutting off 2 of its cylinders, and then it's now performing like a 4-cylinder. Okay, and obviously once the number of cylinders has reduced, you are going to have less combustion. Okay, and it's going to take less fuel than normal. So in that situation, you can have a V6 engine, or let's say a 3.0 V6 or something, performing or consuming less fuel than maybe a 2.0 engine. Okay, so these are some of the dynamics that might change the normal thing we know, that big engines will consume more than small engines. And also you can have a situation where on a highway, you know, on a highway, maybe a car with a big engine is cruising. Okay, if you say we are cruising, it means that you are not accelerating, you're not stepping on your accelerator too much, you're not forcing the car too much, you are just allowing the car to go at its pace. Now the big engine vehicle might be cruising. Okay, for a smaller engine vehicle to be able to keep up with the pace that a big engine vehicle is cruising at, it might have to increase the acceleration. Okay, you step on the accelerator more, and in that case the smaller engine will end up consuming more fuel than the big engine. All right, so it's not always the case that the big engines will consume more. It's normal, but there are some instances where the reverse happens. And another thing that greatly impacts fuel consumption also is your own driving style, and then traffic situation. So if you are somebody who drives, steps on the accelerator a lot, you want to hear, maybe you have some loud exhaust that you want to hear, some vroom vroom like us. We step on it, we want to hear, you are consuming more fuel. You accelerate a lot. You know, there are some people who will step on the accelerator and then will step sharply on the brake when they are getting close to another vehicle. That also affects your fuel consumption. Okay, I'll do a full video on the factors that affect fuel consumption. Let's reserve that for a separate video, and I'll go more into details. So ideally, to bring this video to a close, ideally bigger engines consume more than smaller engines, but with the introduction of modern technology, you can have the reverse happen. And also, very importantly, the consumption of the vehicle is not what you know as 2.5, 3.0, 1.8. That is the engine capacity. So if you're going to buy a vehicle and you want to find out more about it, don't ask about the fuel consumption. You can ask about the engine capacity. Okay, fuel consumption is something else, and that is usually measured in miles per gallon or liters per 100 kilometers. Yeah, so we'll look at that a bit later, but I just wanted to clear this confusion a little bit with this video. So if you have enjoyed this, just like it and share. Thank you so much for staying with me, and I'll catch you on the next one.